evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, the largest single-screen drive-in in the United States. We're certainly glad you could be with us this evening, and don't forget the concession stand is open with all kinds of great things to eat and drink.
89.3 Mahoning Drive-In Radio, your old friend Virgil back once again for another exciting episode of the podcast. As you guys know, the only podcast dedicated to the love and revival of our beloved drive-in culture. Joined as always by my co-host and general manager extraordinaire, Mark. Say hello, my friend.
Hello, my friend.
And joined tonight as well by Jeff, King Jeff, projectionist and owner at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. Say hello, Jeff.
Hi, everybody.
And it's been a while since we have kind of jumped in, just the three of us. Normally, we've been doing these owner series, talking to owners across the country, which has been so incredibly rewarding. The feedback on it has been incredible, but we are truly in the swing of the season. So we want to make sure that we shine a light on that calendar as well. And I think that's the plan for today, right, Mark? We're going to do a little calendar run.
We're going to do a verbal version of the monthly calendar that we now put out for our theater. So the short answer is yes.
It's crazy to think the growth of the business, but we just started doing these calendars last year. Like, what did we do before that? You know, like it was truly relying on, I think, Facebook and social media and getting the word out. But it's just nuts to me that we just started doing calendars, year 8. We're figuring this puppy out.
Yeah. Eventually, we'll learn how to run a theater.
Next year, we're going to turn the sound on.
Oh,
I'll
boy!
tell you.
I can't wait.
Pictures talk.
Yeah.
But we have been seeing such amazing support this season. For the first month that we've been open, we used to say that Zombie Fest is the beginning of our season, or, for folks out there not familiar, Memorial Day is the kickoff for a lot of drive-ins to start welcoming their audiences. But as soon as our gate opens in April, it's like people are so ready to come back and support. And we had some killers in May, man. That Muppets event was gigantic. Just so people know, timestamp. We are about to roll into our first weekend of June. So by the time this hits your ears, we will have played Teen Wolf and Silver Bullet this Friday, and American Werewolf in London, and The Howling on Saturday. And I'll say it now because, we're in the future. How about that Pee-wee event, guys? That crowd that we got for the toy show? Oh, my God.
We had 11 proposals and 4 live births. I would never have thought on a Sunday, but oh boy.
You never know. You just never know the support.
You never know.
Our Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 event kicks off our June Tunnel Vision Tuesday series. But why don't we get into the meat of it? Freaky Friday kind of wrote itself. The original Freaky Friday and the Lindsay Lohan, Jamie Lee Curtis Freaky Friday. So where do you guys fall with these movies?
Well, I saw the original 1976 Freaky Friday. That's Jodie Foster and Barbara Harris. Yes, of course. I saw that on TV as a kid. I always loved it. That was the Disney live action movies I really liked as a kid. And I grew up in the tail end of those still being an ongoing thing. Disney animation kind of went away for a while, and they were just cranking out these live action movies all the time, and they were fun, and they often would have like a chase scene or really wacky sequences that almost felt like they were animated. They were so creatively done. I actually never saw the remake. I'm not big on remakes in general. This is funny enough. This is essentially a remake double take. This is like our first non-branded, non-horror sci-fi remake double take.
That's true, yes.
You have the same story told decades later with Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis in 2003, which I've never seen. So this theoretically will appeal to 2 different audiences. The people who saw that when they were kids, and the kids or grandkids of people who saw the original.
Yeah, that was the thought behind it is, this really does give both audiences the opportunity to come out. And we talked about it before we hit record. We always try to appease the family audience. And by family, I mean just not zombies, and hardcore horror. So this is one of those events where it was like, okay, it's a perfect pairing, double. Let's give it a shot and see how it sticks. To be honest, the original for me was the one that we would watch all the time. And the remake, I know I've seen it, but it's not one that I go back to revisit, but I know it is loved for sure.
It's the choice of a different generation.
There it is.
Yeah.
And we should point out that it is very unique to have the ability to even show these in a theater, because Disney has very strict rules about who can show their repertory films when, and the answer is not many people. So because
You're right.
all retro, if you run first run, you can't run. If you run first run Disney, you can't run retro Disney, with very few exceptions. We're not first run; we're all retro, so we're able to run these films. And this is they're probably original release prints. I think that's what we found so far with everything except maybe. I think everything except Mary Poppins have been original release prints that we're running. So you're seeing the same piece of plastic that light passed through in 1976 in 2023 if you come out to the Freaky Friday Double.
I'm excited to be able to deliver something unique and kind of anti-Mahoning in a weird way. And that was a conscious choice. We talk about it all the time, the three of us, on the booking efforts on we can't just be the horror drive-in. We can't just be the one note band. We have to kind of pick it up and try some new tunes now and then to pull in an even deeper audience. And we've found great success in that. The Muppets event may not have worked 2 years ago, but because the stars aligned, it really, really worked this year and was one of our best family events yet. So you don't know that until you try it.
Right. Eventually, we have to move forward a little bit because our audience constantly gets older. Even the kids 10 years from now will be teenagers. And so we got to start reaching forward a little bit, at least every now and then, like you said, to find that new audience.
Absolutely. Do you have a history with this movie, Jeff, or the remake?
No, the original one I'm sure I saw, but I can't remember a lot about it. I know I did not see the remake, so I can't add too much to that.
It's funny because I remember we would watch The Parent Trap all the time.
Yes.
And they both had remakes right around the same time. So it's like if you were a kid my age, it's like you couldn't avoid these two properties. They were like right in front of you,
And Lindsay Lohan was also the star, or two of the stars, of the Parent Trap remake.
Yeah, there you go. It's like, the Lohan train was moving. So we've seen some good success playing Lindsay Lohan movies. So we hope people come out and appreciate this one in a big way. And in true Mahoning fashion, we make that right turn right away onto Saturday with Cusack Attack. This is one we've been talking about forever. It had different names. If you remember back in the Matt days, Mark, when we talked about this, Matt would always say Sack Fest. And I was like, I don't know if that'll sell.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have a hacky sack tournament?
Yeah, exactly. But we are doing really, I think, what is the beginning of the Cusack fever. Better Off Dead and One Crazy Summer. Mark, is Better Off Dead Cusack's first film, or is it just his first leading role?
I'm not 100%. I know he did The Sure Thing somewhere around this time. It wasn't his first movie because he had been in other films before this. He had a bit part in Weird Science. This is the first movie I consciously remember seeing him in. I saw this movie when it came out. Certain phrases and lines from this movie permanently became part of my family's vocabulary. I want my $2, French dressing, on and on and on and on. I've seen this movie a million times. It's one of my favorite movies, period. I will take this movie over the complete, I know this is controversial, I will take Better Off Dead over the complete works of John Hughes. I love Better Off Dead.
Wow, yeah.
Sensibility spoke to me. The Lane Meyer character spoke to me so much more than the people. Not that the John Hughes movies aren't great, but this always seemed a bit more grounded in reality. Seems ridiculous because this whole thing is about this guy having daydreams and flights of fancy, but it's one of the funniest movies of the 80s. It's got a great soundtrack. I guess we should probably say we have secured for us a video introduction by Diane Franklin, who plays Monique in this film.
The French exchange student herself is gracing us with an intro. So excited about this. Whenever we've been able to connect the dots with the fandom and the stars, it's like, it's such a treat. It really is. And she was so game. She said, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but she goes all in. So definitely worth coming out to check that one out. Cusack, this is a deep well, and we could keep this. It's like the Tom Hanks event that we did, Hanksgiving,
Right.
where there's so much meat on the bone. Where do you go? But this was the perfect early Cusack double,
And
and they're connected.
people don't know One Crazy Summer. Most people don't. It's just about as good as Better Off Dead. It's Savage Steve Holland. It's the same director, a lot of the same actors. Curtis Armstrong is in it, who played Charles DeMar in the original. A lot of it's not a sequel. It's not the same character, but it might as well be. I mean, the character that Cusack plays in One Crazy Summer is more or less the same guy. He's this guy who wants to be a cartoonist. He's a basketball star, and he goes off to Nantucket for a summer, and he just meets up with wacky people, including Bob Goldthwait and John Matuzak, who played Sloth in the Goonies. And it's super funny. It's got a great soundtrack, and it's if you like Better Off Dead, you will love One Crazy Summer.
Yeah, and this is such a treat. When we talked about doing this, it was like, man, can we get it? Can we get it? And we were lucky enough to get this one on 35 millimeter. It's worth mentioning that Better Off Dead, we fought and went every corner of the collector globe, and we cannot find a print of this puppy. But you can't really do One Crazy Summer without Better Off Dead. So,
and I should mention that Demi Moore is the co-star of One Crazy Summer, which was like just before she exploded and became super famous.
And that's the thing. It was almost like for her, what Better Off Dead did for Cusack, where it's like, this kid's a superstar, and all of a sudden he's in everything, leading roles, all that. But that'll be a really, really fun one. And then we jump into the 11th of June as we welcome back our good friend Greg Sestero, co-star of The Room, which is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. 35 millimeter. We did play The Room once. I believe it was 2020 during the pandemic, if I'm not mistaken. Greg did come out, but at that point we didn't have access to the print, as you guys probably assume. Pretty limited run on The Room. But we are lucky enough to have the archive print, so we will be showing The Room in all of its 35 millimeter glory.
Great. Fantastic.
I wonder if it played more than one theater on film. I guess, in its original run. Didn't it really just play like one theater in LA, and then that was out of that?
Yeah, that was the big story of it, was, Hollywood really embraced this movie as celebrities started to show up to this, kind of midnight screening theater and support this movie in a big way. And then it just became so cult. 20 years. I remember talking about this. It was that thing that people handed around in school where you're like, you'll never believe that this is a movie.
If you don't know what The Room is, it was immortalized in a film about the making of the film that starred James Franco called The Disaster Artist, based on a book that I believe Greg Sestero co-wrote. And it is this bizarrely earnest romantic drama about friends and a room, and it's really bad. It's really, boy. It started
a wave of movies that are so bad they're not good, but they were like, you have to see them. It became a draw and almost this like freak show act where it's like, you've got to see this.
Yeah.
And 20 years later, the fact that this thing is still pulling in audiences that are just like so into it, it's become very cult, where people will show up to screenings at certain lines, they will do certain things, very shadow cast, And I think when you get into that mode, that midnight screening mode, that cult gets even thicker, where you're like, all right, I found my like-minded weirdos who get down with this movie. I don't know, it's kind of perfect for us to play. It's the
say what you will about Tommy Wiseau and Sestero, who were behind this movie. People are still talking about it. A lot of movies with a lot more, in quotes, talent and money behind them get forgotten, and this didn't. So I do respect, even though I think it's not good. It is entertaining for maybe not the reason it was intended to be, but people are still talking about it. People are still paying to see this 20 years later in a theater. So congrats to anybody who can make a movie that hangs around like that.
I think it's because there was never really anything else done like that, especially at that time.
You're right. I mean, it was the tenacity thing. I always say, like, Clerks is the movie that launched 1,000 ships because it showed people that, like, hey, if this counts, I'm gonna go try it. And I imagine the room has the same appeal where it's like, okay, this thing lives out there, has a life, has fans, and it's,
Yeah.
it's infamously not good, but that's what's good about it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
such a strange dynamic, but you know, uh, we just booked a very popular video game movie for our video game event that people infamously think is terrible.
Custer's
But
Revenge.
yeah,
Sorry. Deep
but
cut
it
there.
has a cult following, and if you saw it at a certain time, it's perfectly for you. It's strange how movies do that. They almost capture their audience even if they have no right to.
Right. They capture their audience and they drag them right along with them.
That's right. That's right.
Kicking and screaming.
All the way. Yep.
And we like to keep things eclectic. Tunnel Vision Tuesday is the perfect excuse for us to lean into genre classics as Exhumed Films co-presents with us every single week. And that's the case as we jump into the 13th of June with John Woo's Bullet in the Head. I cannot say enough about this movie. I went down the John Woo rabbit hole, as we talked about on the podcast in the off season, and revisiting his filmography, boy, this one really, really pops.
This is one of my favorites. It's not the action extravaganza that you usually think of for a John Woo movie. It's a lot more drama, but it's so good. I mean, I would put it, people always talk about his best, and it's always, The Killer and Hard Boiled. I would put this right up in league with those. This was made between the two films. Killer was, what I think, 89-ish,
Yeah.
and Hard Boiled, I believe, was 92. This is 1990. And I want to say, if I'm remembering correctly, John Woo made A Better Tomorrow, which is a great movie. He made A Better Tomorrow 2, which is very good. And then I believe Choi Hawk went off and made Better Tomorrow 3. And I believe what it was said was that this is the movie that John Woo made to sort of say, well, this is the Better Tomorrow 3 I would have made, which is a prequel to the first two movies. Even though it's not necessarily the same cast, it's spiritually the prequel to the Better Tomorrow movies that he would have wanted to make. And it's just, it is a movie that may leave you with a tear in your eye. A lot of gunplay. He does have the stylish violence and the bullet ballet stuff going on, but it's a really, really good, heavy drama about a group of friends in Vietnam during the Vietnam War who are trying, or they go to Vietnam. I guess they're Chinese, Hong Kong citizens who go to Vietnam to try to make fast bucks, and things really don't go well for them.
Yeah, it's heady. It's got real tragedy on top of the, insane violence, like you said, what John Woo is known for, that kind of operatic violence. But I'm just so excited anytime that we can bring things like this to the screen. We've tried to do Kung Fu nights. We've tried to do, other things that really just don't stick on weekends. But
Yeah.
this is kind of the perfect thing to play on a Tuesday. People will make a point to come out and see it because they do love it so, so much. It's their genre, So
Yeah.
I'm really excited to let this one wash over us on the big screen. And it should be mentioned, I've said it many times, but the draw for me on Tuesdays are that extended trailer reel. The last time we played a John Woo movie, the trailers were just bonkers. I love Harry because he pulls out titles, people haven't thought of in generations, decades,
Yeah.
and I see people pulling out their phones, looking it up,
just gonna
marking
say-
it on their letterbox.
You start adding things to your list when he does those extended trailer reels, because it's bizarre to me that, I love trailers. I've bought every trailer compilation that's come out in the last couple decades, and still there are trailers for movies I've never heard of. And the Hong Kong in the mid to late 80s into the mid 90s was just the best for action.
Honey hole. Yeah.
Insanity. And point out too that this is a film that never screens anywhere. The Woo movies don't screen much as it is anyway, but most people, if they're going to play a John Woo movie, they're going to play Hard Target, or they're going to play The Killer or Hard Boiled. But this one never gets played, and honestly, it's one of his best films.
Yeah. Really, really excited for that one. So mark your calendars. That's going to be a great one. Then we welcome in our good friend Grady Hendrix on the 16th and 17th. And for our haunted house party with Exhumed Films, let's just talk about Grady for a second. So I met Grady in 2015, maybe 2016. He came out for, was it Camp Blood or Zombie Fest? One of our annuals with Harry. And he had just released Paperbacks from Hell, which I think was what, his second or third book? Something
I
like
think
that.
it might have even been before. I know he came out with My Best Friend's Exorcism because I bought a copy from him. And I think
That's right. Was Paperbacks wasn't before that?
that came out after that.
Oh wow. So yeah, definitely I remember getting my Paperbacks from Hell signed, getting the Girlfriend's Exorcism poster, which we still have signed. But to see Grady blow up the way that he has over the last couple years, for those who aren't familiar, Grady is a renowned author who now has all of his works being optioned by Hollywood. So you're going to be seeing a lot of product coming out with the Grady Hendrix name at the bottom of it. And we feel so lucky to have him back and to see him have such incredible success over the last couple years. Do you have a personal relationship with Grady, Mark, or is it
He's very good friends with my friend Paul Kazee, who does the Dead Till Dawn Drive-In show at the Highway in Coxsackie, and he used to do programming, or still does, for Proctor's Theater in Schenectady. They've known each other for years. They helped co-found the New York Asian Film Festival and this thing, Subway Cinema, that they do. They still do screenings all the time of Hong Kong and Asian martial arts movies. So I know him through Paul. I mean, I know we're not friends, but we know of each other. But it is amazing to see how he's taken off with a guy who I'm like, oh, I've got a friend who writes books, and now it's like, yeah, and they made a movie out of Satanic Panic, and they're making a movie out of My Best Friend's Exorcism, and I want to say his latest, How to Sell a Haunted House, which is what this event is kind of built around. That's already, I believe, it's a New York Times bestseller, as they all are, and I think it was just optioned by a company that has Sam Raimi behind it. So.
Come on.
And I think he's writing the screenplay for this too. So yeah, Grady is doing really well. And he's super nice and super funny. He does these shows based around his books where he'll tell stories and talks about other books and joke around and show old paperback covers and things like that. He came out with Chris Pajali because they co-wrote this book, great book called These Fists Break Bricks, which is about Hong Kong martial arts movies in America. And they did a pre-show for when we ran Enter the Dragon that was all like a slideshow with talking about all the different Bruce Lee knockoff movies. He came out for a Camp Blood with when he had Final Girl Support Group, did a whole presentation about that. And I believe he's coming out for this show too.
Yeah, that's the word on the streets. And he's doing something similar. He's going to be doing an intro before each night, kind of part of his show, which people always eat up. Hearing this guy talk about film and his work is always a treat. But we're also playing movies, believe it or not. On Friday night, triple feature, Poltergeist, Legend of Hell House, Burnt Offerings. Man, that is a stacked list. I'll never forget the first time that I saw Poltergeist. It very much was the experience of watching The Exorcist. It opens up your eye to an unknown terror that you never thought existed. The idea of, getting sucked into your closet, into a different dimension, just seems unrealistic unless you are a, naive child that just falls right down that rabbit hole and is like, I'm never opening a closet.
I first saw it when it hit HBO for the first time, and the scene where the guy is in the mirror in the bathroom.
Oh my God.
Blew my mind and horrified me.
Dude,
and
it is.
The scene at the end of the pool was just terrifying.
Yeah, it's done so well. It's masters at work with that film. And man, that mirror scene, it's all coming back with him kind of tearing at his face. Jesus.
It was, now, I want to say the last time I watched it, maybe it didn't play as horrifying because I could sort of see how it was done, but not expecting that and being, what was that, 1982? I was 8 at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one that we have brought back several times. It's a movie that delivers. You could say, there's heavy hitters in the horror genre. That is one of those titles that is absolutely marquee. The marquee draw of the night for sure. Where do you fall on Hell House?
That's one I saw. I know I rented it And that was the one thing I remember about Hell House is that one of the things I love about the home video era in the 80s was that it was returned to like ballyhoo hucksterism in trying to sell a movie, where sometimes you'd take a picture that really has little to do with the movie and you'd slap that on the cover because it was the most marketable element of it. The cover of The Legend of Hell House is a still from the movie of somebody with a really like cut up and like messed up face. That is in the movie for like 10 frames, if even. Like when I watched the movie, I'm like, wait a minute, it's barely even in the movie, but that's the cover. It is very akin. It almost feels like a soft remake of another film we're showing, The Haunting, but it's set in the 70s. So it's early 70s. It's paranormal investigators going into a house and coming up against, demonic forces. It's good. It's a good, solid haunted house movie, which is what we're talking about this weekend.
Yeah. It's a nice twist too, because from what I remember of it, there were a bunch of people who died in the house, like unexplained deaths, and that's how this thing kind of rolls off. But it's a classic, and one that, again, doesn't get screened all the time. So we're really, really excited to bring that one to the big screen. And Burnt Offerings. Where do you guys fall on Burnt Offerings? You ever seen this puppy?
I saw it on TV as a kid. It was a Saturday afternoon. One of the Boston TV stations would always run horror movies in the afternoons. So yeah. I equate so much horror of my youth growing up and discovering movies with daytime. So I always like what I call daylight horror, which are horror movies that are set in the light. I always say there's nothing scarier than something coming at you in the cold light of day. There's no question that thing's coming at you and it's going to get you. It Follows did that really well. And Burnt Offerings kind of has a lot of that going on. It's this nice family who rents this old house from this elderly couple who lives there, and the house just ain't right. There's
something's up with this house.
James as this super creepy chauffeur character. You've got Betty Davis, as I like to say, slumming, and Burgess Meredith, and Oliver Reed, who's just always sweaty and looks like he's about to explode.
It's so true.
Looks like Michael Ironside is staring him down. His head's about to pop. And then you've got Karen Black, directed by Dan Curtis, who did the Dark Shadows TV series and movies and the Night Stalker TV series right before this. So and it's got, I want to say Robert Colbert who did the music for Dark Shadows and Night Stalker, also did the music for this. So it's a great 70s horror movie.
It is really fantastic. I don't know what it is about Karen Black, but something about her it freaks me out. I don't know if it's her eyes. They're just she just has this thing about her, but
she's got a different face. Yeah.
She does have a different face.
Yeah,
but this movie is so incredibly effective. And when it comes to haunted house movies, it's a deep well, but this is one where the performances are so stellar. Did you mention Burgess Meredith?
I did. He was also in The Sentinel the next year. Another great, weird, haunted kind of movie. And Karen Black actually was in Dan Curtis's trilogy of terror like a year or so before.
That's right. Yep. That's the last time I think she hit our screen. But yeah, it's definitely a nice cherry on top at the end of a nice long night and one that is truly creepy. So I love doing these horror events and digging up some stuff that, doesn't always get to play. It's like you get to revisit your nightmares. And then we jump into night 2, the 17th, with The Haunting, The Changeling, and Poltergeist 2.
Let me in.
Let me in. That freaked me out.
The commercials on TV that freaked me out.
Yeah, that face is enough to sell a ticket. That is for sure. You're like, what is this horrifying movie? Why don't you get into it, Mark? What is the differences between Poltergeist and Poltergeist 2?
Well, let us also go back to the other two because I have things to say about those.
Oh, for sure.
Poltergeist 2, well, it's the other side. Poltergeist 2 is actually similar in an idea to the sequel book to the Horror, which was the family got the hell out of Dodge, but the horror followed them. So in Poltergeist 2, I believe the idea is they've moved like pretty far away, or a few states away at least. I want to say this is like Southwest, whereas it was California in the first one. Right. And the evil has followed them, and this time the evil has something to. There's Will Sampson, who plays like an Indian, who was the guy from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, who played the Native American in that. He is in this and plays some Native American shaman who's trying to help the family. So he's sort of like the Zelda Rubinstein character, but he wears a different size dress. And you have Julian. What's his name? I want to say Julian Bond, but that's not the guy. But Julian, I can't think of his last name. Who's the creepy guy? Who's essentially like, isn't he like a Joseph Smith kind of character? He's some like religious cult leader who led his flock off into the desert and they all died or something, and that's got something to do with this movie. I don't remember the details of it. I just remember that creepy old guy.
Yeah, it's enough to freak anybody out. I mean, like I said, that is the trailer moment
Where you're like, what is with this creepy, like, skeleton looking man with the black hat,
Yeah.
I saw this at a drive-in, now that I think about it.
Nice.
I saw this at a drive-in. This is weird. This doesn't happen much anymore these days, but it was on film. Obviously, it was the Claremont Drive-In in Claremont, New Hampshire, where I went. We went to see something else. I think we went to see Cannonball Run. No, it was this was 87. We went to see Spaceballs, and this was the first movie playing that night. And the print was so beat up and so ragged that it would jump from like the middle of a scene to the middle of another scene. Like it was
wow.
And
That's
it had
bad.
already played
That's
on
bad.
cable. It was bad. And what was weird though is like it had already I had already seen this movie on cable. Like it was already on HBO, and this was the first feature that night. So drive-in still used to do that at that point. The first feature might still be something that had been around a lot, if not already on cable and home video by that point. So yeah, I saw this at a drive-in.
That's wild. Well, when it comes to haunted house movies, I don't think any are better or more effective than Robert Wise's The Haunting. You get to see Russ Tamblyn again on the big screen, which I'm super excited about. Where do you guys fall with The Haunting, one of, the most effective horror movies out there?
I don't want to say it's my favorite horror movie, but it's very at the top. Very much.
It's hard not to watch it and not fall in love with it. I say it's very much like The Night of the Hunter, where you fall in love with somebody's artistry immediately.
I mean, Robert Wise, he edited Citizen Kane. He was the director of Sound of Music, West Side Story, Day the Earth Stood Still, this, and Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I know what you want to say, but what has he done lately?
Yeah. Well,
He was a master, and it is so unbelievably atmospheric and creepy. Whenever people say, what's a horror movie I should watch, this is always the first thing I say.
Yeah,
It was
like if
remade
you
in the
haven't
90s.
seen this,
The
what do you
remake
do?
is garbage. Burn the remake, but the original is unbelievably good. Based on The Haunting of Hill House, which was made into a Netflix series recently, a Sherry Jackson, that's somebody else. A Shirley Jackson novel that is going to be the subject at that show of Sandy's book club.
Yeah, so excited. I mean, it's amazing how we've been tapping the literary crowd, It's something that we didn't necessarily go chasing after, but this season is very very heavy when it comes to the writers. So, not only do we have Grady coming out, we got Carl Gottlieb coming out. We started our book club this year, so
Yeah.
if you're a fan, you can really lean into that hard.
and what I like is I hope that some of that book crowd will become movie crowd.
Oh yeah, I think that it's a natural crossover, and
Yeah,
especially with what we offer, a lot of people have said this is a much deeper appreciation for film when you go and see it at the Mahoning. I
Right.
think that's the case even when we don't add the bells and whistles because of the format, but you add in a deeper appreciation, and those are the people who will take the step to find out if this has source material, find out if there's a book made of it, read it, and really get into it. So we've been seeing a lot of really great response, and I think it's an easy crossover, a lover of good storytelling and a lover of the Mahoning. So
Yep.
I don't want to skip it, The Changeling. So The Changeling, have we ever played The Changeling in our run? I don't know if we have.
I don't think so.
But The Changeling is another one of those movies that will horrify you and stick with you. I saw it when I was running the video store, and there are just moments in this movie that catch you off guard, catch you by surprise, Have you ever seen this one, Jeff?
No, I don't believe I have. I showed it. I ran it, I'm pretty sure, but I never got a chance to sit down and watch it.
It's so good.
Yeah, George C. Scott, from what I remember of it, his wife and daughter, I think, die in a car crash. and he goes off to this like mansion, and same situation. What, there's something not right in this house.
Right.
But incredibly effective. And George C. Scott at this time, like, everybody thinks of George C. Scott as a certain type, but he becomes unhinged in this movie, which is really great to see.
Not quite hardcore unhinged, but unhinged nonetheless.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
hardcore.
I know. I was just going to mention hardcore because that was something else when he's in that movie theater and he practically pulls the chair out of the cement in front of him. Oh my gosh.
That's a great movie. Out. That and Boogie Nights would be a really interesting double feature for people who don't want to.
Long, but great.
Long, but not happy. There's a great Canadian coldness to The Changeling. It was shot in Canada, shot in the wintertime. I kind of hope it's chilly that night so you can get that chillerama shock going on, because it's just coldness in terms of what the environment visually is, but also coldness in just the desolation and the isolation of this widower, or what do you call it when you lose a child too, this lonely man. And it's a great big old haunted house movie. Severin Films put it out on Blu-ray a while back, and it came with a little inflatable rubber ball, which if you've seen the movie, or once you see the movie, you'll know why that was kind of a neat little tchotchke. But The Changeling, I think it's one of the best horror movies of the 80s. People don't talk about it because it's not a slasher movie. It's a very quiet movie, but it's a perfect movie to come right after The Haunting.
Yeah, this is one of those triples where it's like, gosh, you could pick any one of those, come and watch just that, and be fully satisfied with your night out. But the fact that we did all three is just such a treat.
This might be one of the best lineups we've had in a long time. In terms of every movie is 100% solid.
It is, really excited about it. So last year, we launched a new ship as we programmed to Mother's Day. And we did, what did we call that event last year, Mark? Mommy Issues. And this year, we're booking to Father's Day with Daddy Issues. As we show The Stepfather on 35 millimeter. Before we get into the movie, I'll talk briefly about what happened with The Stepfather, Camp Blood 4. We were set to show The Stepfather when we had Jill Sholin as our guest of honor at Camp Blood. And to our surprise, we were sent the remake of The Stepfather. And when it hit the screen, it was pretty apparent that we did not have the right title. But that is something that has become somewhat legend at the Mahoning. So we're really excited to bring it back as a standalone ode where people can come and truly appreciate Terry O'Quinn in all of his madness. So pretty much the story behind this is that a wife and daughter, the wife starts dating this man. The daughter is very kind of questionable about who he is and all that. And turns out that he's got a deeper past than anybody could have imagined. We enjoyed this at the 24-hour, am I right? 24-hour fest?
I believe so, yeah. The last one that we were all at. Or the one before that. Time is just a big blur.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah. But this is a crowd pleaser, to say the least. It just delivers from beginning to end. And I don't know, was this a big like HBO movie when it came out? I caught it later, but it seems like it would be.
I remember this movie being a hit more not in theaters, more in the video store, home video, HBO era.
It spawned a bunch of sequels.
Somebody said that when we were announcing this, that they thought the second one was actually pretty good. One of them is called Stepfather. I think it might be 2, it might be 3, but let's say it's 2. Stepfather 2, Make Room for Daddy, which I think is kind of funny.
That's fantastic.
And Terry O'Quinn had been around for a while, but this was the movie that sort of his first big role. And then people kind of tended to forget about this. And when Lost came out, they were like, this guy's a revelation. And I'm like, he's the stepfather.
Yeah, it is one of those performances. You get to see him play two dynamic sides of a character. He's troubled mentally, but you get to see this kind of clean cut, convincing homebody. And then you get to see this kind of psychotic, murderous psychopath. And for any actor, this is just such a thick sandwich to bite into, you know? And he knocks it out the park. Is he in all of those Stepfather sequels, or eventually were they like, okay, he pretty much made that series?
I don't know. I I kind of think maybe he wasn't in anything. I'm pretty sure he's in the second one. I do not believe he's in the third one.
A lot of people know him from Lost. He came back later.
Yeah.
It was like a doctor or something in Lost. But yeah, really, really excited to be able to show this one. And again, perfect angle with it being on Father's Day. So if you guys want to come out and enjoy that one, mark your calendars for June 18th. Eclectic Tuesdays this year. We're trying to spread the wings a bit, and Harry's been doing a great job with the programming on Tuesdays. On June 20th, not what you'd expect as we go into National Lampoon's Vacation. I know where you guys fall with this one.
I love this movie.
This movie is one of the funniest movies to come out of the era, and just is a stone cold classic. Has delivered so many sequels, a franchise, if you will, and is so beloved. Gosh, I could go into all the memorable moments, but where do you guys fall with Vacation?
I saw it in the theater when it was new. My uncle took me to see this in the theater. It was always a thrill because I was 9 when this came out, and it was an R-rated movie, and it had everything you want in an R-rated movie. And it was like I was getting away with something, because I guess I was watching this raunchy National Lampoon back when that meant something over a title. And it was just the funniest thing. And again, there are things in here that became part of my family's lexicon of references for the rest of our lives. The Lindsey Buckingham theme song and end theme, which are great. And I mean, don't discount Dancing Across the USA. That's a pretty darn good song too. Everybody just remembers Holiday Road. It spawned many, many sequels, none of which I think can hold a candle, although I think Christmas Vacation is great in its own as a family comedy. But this is like another film that I'm not going to mention that we are playing as a Tunnel Vision Tuesday coming up. It started as an R-rated movie for grown-ups, and it was so wildly popular that the rating got softer and softer as it went. So ultimately, by the last movie, I think it was just a flat PG by the time Vegas Vacation rolled along. But nothing can touch the original. It's great. It blows my mind that this movie is 40 years old, because I think of time in terms of when I was a kid. And when I was a kid in the 80s, 40 years ago was the 1940s, and that's a different planet. I don't feel like things have changed that much since 83, but maybe I just don't pay attention.
Yeah.
No, I was in my 20s when that came out, and I went and saw it brand new, and it was a riot. I mean, I loved it. It was great.
It's
you're
a
right.
style of comedy. It really is.
Yeah.
It's like a specific voice.
And I would say you're right. The sequels don't hold a candle to it. I think it goes right from the first one to the last one. In my opinion, the next best one is Christmas Vacation, which is the last one they did.
Actually, no, they did Vegas Vacation after that.
That's right. Yes.
How good was that? If you don't mind,
I don't know how big of a release that got, or if that was more like
theater. And I went, and I remember sitting there with a straight face through the whole movie, and I was so disappointed. I know people who are younger love it because that's probably the first one they saw, but boy.
Papa Giorgio, yeah, we definitely had a love for it in our house. It's a different vibe, you know what I mean? It really is. I mean, you got to think this original was John Hughes at his sharpest, Harold Ramis at his finest. It's like, it is a who's who of comedy legends of the time, and it's the perfect marriage between a director and a writer. I mean, it's so well executed, and the laughs that you have and the moments that stick with you, it's kind of unbelievable. But for those who don't know, Chevy Chase, Beverly D'Angelo take their family across the country to Wally World for vacation, and the madness ensues. Oh my gosh. I hope we get a wood paneled Chevy or a station wagon coming out, because that would just...
Oh my gosh.
There is one.
The wagon queen family truckster.
That's right.
In metallic P. There is one. I've seen pictures somewhere in either the New York, New Jersey, or Pennsylvania region. There is one that shows up. So that would be fantastic. Just rolled in with that.
Would not put it past our fans to show up in a screen accurate vehicle.
And I'll tell you what, I was so happy when they made Christmas Vacation, because since the sequels weren't that good, when they did Christmas Vacation, I thought they nailed it. I thought they finally got it back.
Oh, it is. It's the number one Christmas movie in our house.
It's the second best one. Yeah, it's the second best one. Yeah.
I just love it because, we watched that as a kid, growing up, and there's some raunchy moments in that movie, and
Yeah.
it really works on that level, as does the original Vacation. It's got
Yeah.
the lampoon staple is we're just going to push the envelope a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Really excited, like I said, as we lean into our authors and our writers, we jump into our screenwriter series with the one and only Carl Gottlieb, screenwriter of Jaws, The Jerk, among others, but we are shining a light on Jaws and The Jerk as a perfect double feature on the 23rd of June. Don't need to say much about Jaws. That's one that, those of you guys that are fans of the Mahoning, that's how we launched this retro ship with Jaws and Jurassic Park. Jaws is the movie which will draw people every single time you play it. I argue we could play it probably once a month and it would still draw.
It is the most played film. I would love to see the stats. Universal has probably never stopped making money on this movie because it plays all the time,
Constantly.
And we talked to our Caswell cook at the Misquanticut Drive-In in Rhode Island, and he said the same thing. They play it at least once a season, as well as Jaws 2, which Carl also wrote. And he said it packs every time, especially for them because they're across the street from a beach. So, it totally makes sense for them. We're showing Jaws and The Jerk. This is actually a double feature that Carl Gottlieb had talked about wanting theaters to do, and figuring you get the scary one first and then you release all that tension and energy by having a laugh. Like, you leave the theater happy with The Jerk. And also, if we reverse the order, we would be saying we're playing Jerk and Jaws, and that doesn't sound like a movie. It doesn't sound like something we could legally get away with. So
I didn't think about that one. That was well placed.
Jaws is great with a capital G. Carl Gottlieb is in the movie. He plays, I believe, somebody on the town council or a reporter or something like that. Yep. And he wrote The Jerk, and he plays Iron Balls McGinty in The Jerk.
The one.
I think we should be pushing that hard. That come out and meet Iron Balls McGinty. Because he's in one of The Jerk is so funny. The Jerk is a movie I grew up watching on TV and eventually renting, and suddenly it was a whole other movie when you could see it uncut. And these are two great movies together. Carl has this huge history in Hollywood. He was part of this improv comedy team, sketch comedy team called The Committee, which Howard Hessman and some other notable people were in, like in the late 60s. He was a writer for the Smothers Brothers show. He wrote Dr. Detroit. He wrote and directed Caveman. He actually wrote Jaws 1 through 3. And he wrote this book called The Jaws Log, which was a making of book, which was a bestseller in its day. I've got a paperback copy of it. And
Infamous.
There's a new edition of that he'll be there selling and signing copies of The Jaws Log.
And honestly, like Jaws, as many people say, created the blockbuster.
The love and fandom around Jaws is insanity. And when that book came out, it was instantly a hit because everybody wanted to know the inside story of the making of Jaws. How did they pull this off? How was this movie so effective? And I mean, that's worth mentioning for anybody who hasn't seen Jaws in a while. I went and saw the remaster with my dad over the off season.
The 3D?
Yeah. You know what? I don't know if it was 3D.
Okay, because there was a 3D reissue in the off season too.
But it was definitely a remaster because this thing looked so incredible. But this movie, even after all of this time, has you on the edge of your seat. It's filmmaking at its best. It's tension filmmaking at its best. And you guys know it. We got to see, the birth of a genius in Spielberg with this puppy. So,
right.
Did you guys have a theatrical experience with this movie? I so wish that I could have experienced this like when it came out and went through that fandom.
Yeah, I first saw it when it was brand new. I was a teenager, not even my 20s. I was a teenager when it came out. And I was fortunate enough, even though it was R-rated, to get in to see it. And I'd never seen anything like it before. I mean, nothing came close to that. I thought, wow, this is just fantastic filmmaking. I thought it was great.
Every now and then a movie comes out and just like presents what a movie can be. And I think that this was that movie. It just opened up the eyes on, what entertainment in the movie theaters could contain.
Right.
And actually, this was PG when it came out. back in the 70s, you could do so much in a PG movie. Now it would probably be rated at least PG-13 or R just for the scenes of peril and the tone.
Yeah.
But it's got a
Yeah.
little nudity, which you could do in PG back then, and it's got a little gore, which you could do back then. But it's not wildly explicit. It's really that tension and that terror of something is below the surface that wants to eat you and you can't see it.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's ever been done as well. It truly is like I said, you're on the edge of your seat through the entire movie. It's so incredibly effective and well done. And again, anytime that we play it, it crushes. It's a beloved film. People love seeing it, and we've been lucky enough the last couple of times we played it that the prints were gorgeous, except for that one time the print didn't show up. But the legend with this movie and the Mahoning goes deep, and we're really excited to bring the person responsible for bringing it to the big screen into the family. And The Jerk, I don't know if we would have ever got to The Jerk if we didn't make this pairing. That's one that's just very hard to program and plop on a bill,
I probably would have kept pushing for it as The Jerk and Man with Two Brains.
Yeah, nice Steve Martin double.
Give us a couple years, we'll do that, because Man with Two Brains is really funny. And Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. Not a lot of marquee value, but that's a really funny movie. So I think there's still gas in the tank for a Steve Martin weekend one day down the road.
Yeah.
Even The Lonely Guy is pretty funny, but nobody talks about that. Pennies from Heaven, if you want to give somebody a really downer way to leave the theater.
I love Pennies from Heaven so much. Good. I talked about it. Who's the girl in that? Madeline Kahn?
Is it, or is it Bernadette Peters again?
That's it. I fell in love with Bernadette Peters watching that movie in the off season. She is just the sweetest, cutest. Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So speaking of gas in the tank, we are heading into what is going to be an epic night with our Cannonball Run double. Mark, why don't you let the folks know what is so special about this Cannonball Run series?
Okay, Jeff and Virgil, if you need to go to the bathroom or grab a bite, I got the next 40 minutes covered. The Cannonball Run is my favorite movie, period. A lot of people think it's bad. The critics hated it, whatever. Oh, the Gumball Rally's better, whatever. I love the Cannonball Run. I saw it at the drive-in, at the Claremont Drive-In when I was a kid. I saw it multiple times in the theater. I always like to say I saw it 3 times in the theater as a kid in 3 different theaters back when you could do that in a small New England town. And it just always captured my heart and imagination as the lure of the open road, the lure of driving fast, the lure of getting. It is no exaggeration to say Cannonball and Smokey are why I work for the Mahoning right now, because they were what made me want to go out and get out on the road and go places and do things. So the Cannonball Run is based on an actual race that was run in the 70s, organized by Brock Yates from Car and Driver magazine, and it was originally it's sort of like a protest to the then new 55 mile an hour speed limit. They were trying to say, look, people can drive safely at high speeds and not get into an accident if they're good drivers. So the idea was they would drive from the Red Ball Garage in New York City to the Portofino Inn in Redondo Beach, California. And there were no rules. It was whoever gets there the fastest. You would punch in on one coast and you'd punch out on the other, and they would compete. Crazy. And a lot of what is in the Cannonball Run, it was made into a movie twice before. It was made into a movie called The Gumball Rally, which a lot of people love, the Warner Brothers movie, which is good. It was made into a movie called Cannonball! That was done by Paul Bartel for Roger Corman's New World Pictures with David Carradine, and that's a fun drive-in movie too. But to me, the Cannonball Run's where it all comes together. In 1979, the Cannonball Run race had stopped for a while, and Hal Needham, who had done Smokey and the Bandit with Burt Reynolds and Hooper with Burt Reynolds, had said to Brock Yates, let's make another Cannonball movie. And Brock Yates said, there's already been 2. And he's like, screw those, we'll make a good one. We'll make the best Cannonball. So they actually staged one more race in 1979 in order to basically, Hal Needham just wanted to do it because he was a stuntman who drove like rocket cars and stuff. He wanted to experience the race and get stories for a movie. So the ambulance that you see in the film is the ambulance that Brock Yates and Hal Needham, with Brock Yates' wife as the patient. I mean, if you listen to the commentary on the DVD for Cannonball Run, you would be shocked at how much of this movie is fact-based, down to dialogue, down to incidents. Like, a lot of this really happened. There really were 2 guys in a big old truck, one of them called Mad Dog, who I met. I mean, it's just wild. The cars are amazing. That Lamborghini that opens the movie changed many a life. You've got the cast is, you want to spend 20 minutes going through the cast: Burt Reynolds, Farrah Fawcett, Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, Jamie Farr, Dom DeLuise,
It's a
Adrian
who's who.
Barbeau.
It
It's
really
insane.
is.
The first time I showed this to a friend of mine who'd never heard of it or seen it, the names just kept going and they just started cracking up. It's like, this cast list is never going to end. It's just pure fun, and it's a car movie. And I always say there's nowhere better to watch a car movie than at a drive-in with your hands on a wheel. So what we have is Cannonball Run 1981, Cannonball Run 2 1984, which isn't as good, I will say, but it is still fun and funny and packed with stars. And you've got a limousine driven by an orangutan with Mel Tillis and Tony Danza in the back.
Need we say more?
Need we say more? That gets pulled over by a pair of cops played by Don Knotts and Tim Conway. Come on. And it's, by the way, the Cannonball movies were produced by Albert Ruddy, who produced The Godfather. The man who brought you The Godfather brought you the Cannonball movies. And there's a pretty extensive Godfather spoof in Cannonball 2, featuring Charles Nelson Riley. Anyway, so we're running those movies.
You got to be versatile.
I am somewhat connected in the Cannonball community, so we're going to have, I don't know the number yet, but we're going to have cars coming out who actually have made a Cannonball Run. Some of them more recently, maybe even a record holder for more recently. There was a thing called One Lap of America, which is what the Cannonball evolved into, which was more above board. It was like a rally. Cars would go from track to track and then do some laps and keep going. There's a car that ran in the one lap that's coming out that still has all the stickers from those races on it. We have, I guess I can spill the beans here. I believe, as of this recording, we will have a video introduction from Adrian Barbeau.
Come on, folks.
Yeah. And we will have some extremely rare footage on the screen. I'm connected with Mr. Garo Hashek, who is doing he's not doing a podcast, he's doing a documentary series about the Cannonball races and movies. His father raced in the Cannonballs and New Brock 8. He's very connected. He's helping us out with this show. He has a preview of his new documentary we'll be playing, and I can't say what it is, but something that I sought after for decades in terms of rare Cannonball video that is unique Cannonball video that we will be playing either after the movies or during intermission or something like that. So it's going to be like the Monkeys event I did. I'm throwing myself a party and saying,
and y'all are invited.
Yeah, everybody else is invited to pay a little and enjoy this, but people who have Cannonball cars, we're saying they get in free if they register with us in contact. So we're going to have a display of actual cars from the Cannonballs, and I'm still actively every day working to make this the coolest show I can for me and fans of these movies. If you don't care about all the races and all the hoo-ha, these are two great movies that are funny. You've got Roger Moore playing a guy who thinks he's Roger Moore. You've got the Aston Martin. The cars are the stars. I can't say enough, so I'll stop talking.
I can't wait for this, and this has been our mode over the last couple seasons is,
if we have somebody who's connected with a certain fandom, we partner with them. We try to deliver the finest fan experience possible. And having Mark responsible for this one, just like the Monkeys event last year, it's in the perfect hands. And it's truly being organized by a fan. And that's really what the Mahoning's about. It doesn't matter if it's the biggest blockbuster on the planet, doesn't matter if it's more niche. As long as we tap into that fan base, let them know we're doing this thing, they're going to come and have the greatest time. And we're really, really psyched about it.
And I will say that this the Cannonball Run almost never plays in theaters. It was one of the biggest movies of 1981. It has rarely played since it came out. Cannonball 2, I don't think has ever played since it came out. And I don't know if there has literally ever in the history of the world been a double feature of these two movies together.
I love that. Breaking new ground at Mahoning. Yeah, it's one that is truly a gift. And, anytime that we can marry the car culture and the drive-in culture, which are one and the same, it's just, we're ahead of the game right out the gate, no pun intended. So we continue our music series, which is one of our favorite things to do here at the Mahoning, with a screening of Rock, and Roll High School, along with a punk rock vinyl flea market on Sunday, June 25th, and we could not be more excited. Not only are we hosting a vinyl/punk rock flea market, which the Sunday markets have been going incredibly well, but we also have a cover band coming out, a Ramones cover band, right, Mark?
Yes, they are called Take It Dee Dee. It is a Ramones cover band from New Jersey who's going to be gracing the stage or the screen, under the screen. They'll be playing it fast and loud that night.
It's going to be great. I mean, you know, the movie is one thing. The Ramones are a whole other vibe. Our good friend and fan Dave Wright connected us with the Ramones cover band, and it couldn't be more perfect. You know, when it comes to our loves, you know, it's movies, it's music, it's, you know, the drive-in culture, and this really marries all those things together. And the three of us are record heads, so
Yeah.
anytime you invite record vendors to come out on the lot, it's going to be a special night.
We try to get there first before we open, basically.
Yes, exactly. We'll be clamoring at the table. Where do you guys fall with Rock and Roll High School? Is this one that you guys were able to experience in theaters? It seems kind of like the cult movie. I don't know how big it was in theaters.
I would have been too, well, I wouldn't have been too young. I don't ever remember this playing. This is 1979, and I was going to the movies as a little kid in 79 as a 5-year-old, but I never heard about it until I saw it in the video store shelves, and I rented it, and I just fell in love with it. It's like a living Mad Magazine cartoon. It's super funny. The music is great. The energy is like a Ramones song. It just goes ahead at 200 miles an hour. The last time we played it, I remember just jumping up and down, literally, or when I worked in the snack bar, and thinking, you know, we could play this once a month, and I would be happy to watch it.
Yeah, it delivers in such a way. PJ Souls as the ultimate Ramones fan, and she could not be just more lovable in this movie. We were angling to try to have this be a PJ Souls event, and shifted kind of at the last moment, but this is one that brings out the fandom in a big way. The last time we screened it, we had cosplayers, we had folks going all out. So I imagine that'll be the case when we screen it again. So can't wait for that one. Then we're taking a little trip to Mars, y'all. The 27th of June, Total Recall as part of our Tunnel Vision Tuesday with Exhumed Films. We played Total Recall before for our Verhoeven weekend.
Yeah.
This thing is a mind bender, to say the least. Sci-fi at its wackiest, at its craziest. Were you guys lucky enough to experience this one in the theater? I wish I could have.
Oh yeah, I ran it when it was brand new, and I also sat down and watched it.
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
Oh man, brand new print, you know, brand new soundtrack, Dolby Surround. I mean, it was unbelievable. Great movie.
You know, everybody knows and loves different aspects of this movie.
Yeah.
Insanely quotable. It's really a feast.
Yeah.
Mark, where do you fall on the Total Recall love? Verhoeven knocking it out the park on this one.
I don't know why. I was late to this one. I mean, not very late, but I didn't see this in the theater. 1990. I would have been old enough to see it in the theater, I think. I don't remember why I didn't see it in the theater. I caught up with it on cable or home video and thought it was just great. I mean, at the time, the effects, nobody had seen effects like that before. And it is a mind bender. Like, you don't really know where this movie's going to go. And especially if you kind of go in blind, the hard turn this movie takes with Schwarzenegger's character is, it's amazing. It's the kind of movie that you wouldn't necessarily peg him for if you just read an outline of the story, because it is a much more intelligent sci-fi action movie.
Yes.
But,
yes.
Sharon Stone's in it, and she's great. It's just Rachel Tickerton, I believe, is in this, and she's great. It's just it's a solid, fun movie that hopefully, you know, people are gonna. Hopefully, there'll be people who see it for the first time when we run it.
Oh, man.
I always love that when we get the first timers or the people bringing their girlfriends or boyfriends to come and experience this movie that they love so much. This is gonna blow some minds, literally. And like you mentioned, Mark, there is a true crossover with the love of the Mahoning and the love of practical effects. And this is just top of the game practical effects, stuff that will literally sear into your brain after you watch it. So mark your calendars. That's going to be another great one. And then we finish off June with the return of probably the most requested event, Godzilla Palooza 2. Which we're branding as Godzilla Palooza Raids Again.
Which was the name of the Godzilla sequel in the original run of Godzilla films back in the 50s. Godzilla Raids Again was the second black and white Godzilla movie.
And we are so excited to bring this back to the screen. I want to say it was 2019, maybe 2020 when we did Godzilla Palooza 1, and it was a packed house, if I remember correctly. To date, one of our largest audiences.
Yep.
And the love for the Big G runs so deep. We start Thursday with a little pre-show of Godzilla versus Megalon, which is a Stone Cold classic. Why don't you give them a rundown on Friday, Mark, the 30th?
We have Terror of Mechagodzilla from 1975, the original Mothra from 61, and Godzilla 2000 from 1999, which was the first Godzilla movie I was ever able to see in a theater.
You know, I don't hate it. It's one of those
Thought it was
things
fun.
like, yeah, you know, like I think that new Godzilla that came out when I was younger was the one that everybody hates, but this actually stands up as a great Godzilla movie.
It was a legit Toho Japanese Godzilla movie. And, you know, we hadn't had one of those hit U.S. screens, at least widely in the mainstream, probably since Godzilla 1985, if you count that, because even that was sort of heavily manipulated by the U.S. Distribution company. But
oh, yeah.
Yeah, Godzilla was a steady for me as a kid. It was Saturday afternoon creature double feature on WLVI Boston's TV 56. Every Saturday afternoon, there'd be one or two Godzilla movies. So the sounds of these movies and their soundtracks and their dubbing and their sound effects, they're all just burned into my being. And we got a great crowd that last time. It was really all ages, from like toddlers to the elderly.
Yeah, and I think it'll be the same situation as Universal Monsters in that way, where it's just one that anybody can come out and enjoy the simple love of watching big monsters smash each other.
And a lot of these too are CinemaScope or Toho scope, so they will fill our widescreen.
Yeah, they're going to be gorgeous. On Saturday, we jump in with Godzilla vs. Kong, Rodan, and Giant Monsters All Out Attack, which is,
I love that.
Man, melee from beginning to end. Another great triple feature, and honestly, like I always say, any one of these would be standalone gold, but you get so many throughout this weekend. 4 days on Godzilla Palooza this year. Any of those pop out for you guys? Well, let me ask you this. Do you have a favorite when it comes to the Godzilla run? I know it's tough.
One of my favorites is Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monster All Out Attack, which is a title that will fit on no marquee anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Because that was from 2001. It was the one that came right after Godzilla 2000. And that, I believe, sort of took the tack to say there was the original Godzilla movie in the 50s, and now Godzilla's coming back for the first time. And it's more serious. And it's got some really dark humor, though. Like Godzilla's, I don't want to ruin it, but Godzilla's like walking past a hospital and somebody's in a hospital bed and they can't get out and they think, oh, I'm going to die. And he just walks past and they're like, whew, and then his tail whips through the building. And it's not a benevolent Godzilla in that movie. And you get the multiple monsters. It's a lot of fun. It does do a kind of a silly thing with, you know, the Godzilla child in it that's pretty cartoony. But they always did that in these movies. But I mean, King Kong Godzilla is versus Godzilla is pretty iconic. The whole, you know, theoretically U.S. versus Japanese thing in that. There only ever was one ending, despite what urban legends might say. They're just so much fun. Rodan almost nobody ever plays, so that's.
I'm so excited to watch that. There's so much love for that. Mothra has its love as well, but I don't know. Can you beat Godzilla, baby? I don't think. You're like, yeah, you can pretty easily.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe we'll do it on Sunday the 2nd as we close out Godzilla Palooza with Destroy All Monsters. What a gem. We played this a couple years back for our Tunnel Vision Tuesday series, and it's one that always pulls a crowd. You know, again, the love of the Big G, it doesn't fall short at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. So really excited to be bringing that one back. So much going on. Whenever we go over these calendars, it's like, oh my goodness, this could be somebody's full season, you know? And we're jamming it all into one month. So
this is only our second full month of operation. Just remember that. This is insane.
Yeah. And that's why whenever things kind of hit the skid, I'm just like, all right, we're going to go focus on our other 200 events that we got to put on this year.
Exactly. We're just getting started.
just getting revved up. So for those of you guys that are just discovering the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, we so appreciate you for taking us into your heart. As you know, our whole mission is now to shine a light on the drive-in culture, preservation of 35 millimeter, and every single person that comes on board with this movement, you have no idea how far it goes. And we're so excited. I'm going to spoil it here, but we had a meeting today with Kodak Film. We're officially sponsored by Kodak Film, which, you know, to think when we started this thing in 2014, looking out that door, waiting for at least one car to show up on a Friday or a Saturday, that we would have giants of the industry coming to us and really appreciating what we're doing for the culture and to spread the word and all that stuff. So really excited about this partnership, and it comes with some really fun stuff for the fans too. We're talking about doing some co-branded swag. We're going to have some co-branded merch available at the merch table. So stay tuned. But I just wanted to put that out there and thank the good folks at Kodak for taking us into their heart just as much as the fans have. So again, guys, mark the calendar. Lots coming up. MahoningDIT.com for all the dates, the deets, and the tickets. And hopefully we'll see you guys under the stars at the Mahoning very, very soon.
Absolutely.
As you leave the theater, folks, please be careful. Don't let this happen to your car. Be sure to remove the speaker before you leave. If you should accidentally pull a speaker loose, please turn it in at our snack bar or box office. Thank you.
And on that note, I think, Jeff, take it away, my friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for coming out tonight to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. We hope you'll come back and see us again real soon. The exit is on the right-hand side of the screen at the front of the field, and most importantly, have a very safe trip home. Good night and God bless you.